Hi, everybody. We are here for a special edition of SADS Live. Today, we'll have a special guest host, Jen White, and two special guests, Amy and Amy Seed and Annie Golden, to discuss our upcoming conference. We're so happy you're able to join us today. And without further ado, let me go ahead and just put everybody on screen and we can talk about conference.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'll introduce myself. Sorry, I'm not Mike Ackerman. I won't pretend to be, but I am an emergency medicine doctor, ER doctor in Philly at the Jefferson Hospital. I'm the medical director of that emergency department there. I have long QT syndrome type 2, and I have two of my four children, the two boys, also have long QT type 2. I've been a member of SADS. I don't know, I would say maybe almost a decade now, a SADS member, and I have gone to the SADS conference almost every single year over the last decade that we've held it live. So it's something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited and passionate about and happy to host this discussion. So feel free to put any questions, comments, thoughts, quips, anything you want to debate in the chat, and we have Amy and Andy here to talk about the conference as well. So why don't we start with some introductions? Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're involved in SADS, and just give our audience a little bit of background.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy. I actually have CPVT. I was first diagnosed with long QT, and then years later diagnosed with CPVT. And why I'm in touch with SADS is because I was introduced to SADS by my doctor, and then I got to meet a lot of people and everything, which was great.
And Amy, did you have genetics done for both of them? For
Yes.
CPVT and long QT? And you have just CPVT now. It was a misdiagnosis of long QT in the beginning?
It wasn't really a misdiagnosis. It was what was showing on the test results at that time. So they can only go by the test results.
That makes sense. And where do you live?
New York City.
In Manhattan proper?
No, in Queens.
In Queens. All right. I'm a New Yorker, went to medical school in Brooklyn. New York is near and dear to my heart. So, and how long have you been a part of SADS, did you say?
In 2014.
2014. Yeah. Well, great. And then Andy, I know way back from the very beginning of SADS. Andy, how long have you been around, and why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Andy Golden. I'm tempted to say at least a decade, but I've really lost track. And I accidentally got involved in SADS when I met someone from SADS and said, what does SADS mean? I saw their name tag. I was at another meeting, and when they said that it was acquired, it was a sudden arrhythmia death syndrome. I said, oh, I have one of those. Mine is acquired, however, from scar tissue from heart surgery as a little kid. And my doctor now studies adults who had surgery over 50 years ago who now have various arrhythmias. And so I had ventricular tachycardia, which prompted the placement of an ICD in 1998. So I've had ICDs for 23 years. And I got involved in SADS right away because I thought families who are also facing that decision might want to meet someone who has grown up essentially with a ICD. I still work, I still play, I still thrive. So I thought I could be someone who could be a little bit helpful.
No, that's awesome. And would you say that the conference, for both of you, does it make you feel less alone in this whole thing?
Oh, for sure. It was nice to meet other people who had ICDs. I don't know anybody with an ICD. And then it was just, for me, as I'm a scientist, and so it was just fascinating to also learn about the genetics and the medical history of long QT. And so that part fascinates me, but it was just great to meet people who have a similar story to you.
Absolutely. And Amy, CPVT is very rare, sort of the SADS conditions. Have you found a community within SADS that you can relate to, and how has your experience been at the conferences? Have you found that you've had enough content for the CPVT portion?
At the conferences, I feel that there should be more about CPVT because it's mostly long QT and ICD information. Yes, I did find support in the conferences because they did the breakout sessions. So there was some people I met who also have CPVT.
And do you remember which breakout sessions, just kind of generally speaking, that you like the most?
The ones with the specific conditions.
Okay, the CPVT breakout session.
Yeah, because then you get to know about people in that group.
And
then I also have an ICD too.
Oh, you do? So,
yeah.
I think along the lines of Andy and Amy, I don't know, you can tell me what you think. Having an ICD and being young and otherwise healthy, right? It's a very different situation than the usual patient that has an ICD who's typically somewhat older, who may be more sedentary, may have lots of other comorbidities, in terms of other devastating health conditions. But the young, healthy person that, wants to go skiing with their ICD or travel the world, I think it's really helpful to see other people living life, right? So can you think of like any specific stories or examples of even, for me, it would be the kids at the conference that are living so boldly, but do either of you want to share a moment where you felt like this is why we're here, people can still live boldly and well with their device?
I was 13 when I first got my ICD. And then years later, now they have remote monitoring. And before they didn't have that and always had to rush to the hospital. And I got to present Atlanta to the kids. So I told them about my story.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's weird because every time when I go to the doctor's office, it's like looking around and I'm like the youngest one.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got my ICD at Hopkins in Baltimore, they had a support group that would meet once a month. And I was 38 when I got my first ICD. And I was the only one who still worked. And everybody else was in their 70s. And they didn't do anything. And so it was nice to go to the SADS and meet the kids. And I met a lot of people my age. And the kids always are really inspiring because I met a kid who played ice hockey with an ICD. And I said, doesn't it sometimes go off? He goes, yeah. And then I'll sit out for a minute. I'll calm down. And then they put me back on the ice. And I'm like, oh. So I was like, no, when my box goes off, I'm down for the day because I need to mentally recover. But it was inspiring that, these kids who grow up with them, some of them are tough and their box fires and they keep playing. Yeah, so it was nice to meet a lot of kids.
No, I think that those are the stories that keep us going. I've heard from some people that they're maybe a little bit afraid to go to a SADS conference for the first time. And when I ask them why, a lot of times it's because they don't want to hear this really sad stories. And because there are some sad stories. And families are there maybe because they suffered a horrible loss, right? And so is there any advice you would give to those families who are nervous about coming for the first time because either they're scared to have their kids sort of seeing, other families sharing their devastating losses? Did that affect either of you? I know, Andy, you've been going a long time. Amy, was that a fear of yours that maybe you'd hear these scary stories that, you didn't think of, but now you will?
Actually, I read many scary stories about people who have family who died. And it didn't really scare me because I'm like, oh, having a SADS condition doesn't stop you from doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes great to hear about those, even though they're sad. Mm-hmm. Because now you can try to see if there's any way for around screening or before those sad stories happen.
Mm-hmm. Andy, what do you think? What advice would you give to people who are afraid to hear about this stuff?
I think the meeting is so upbeat because, first of all, the kids are going to meet other kids in the same situation. So they're going to all of a sudden realize they're not isolated. They get to share their story. But what I always found very upbeat was the parental sessions where you would find out that science gets better and better and the treatment gets better and better. And now these tragic stories are becoming more rare. And it's nice to hear those stories. I think it's really valuable to understand and hear those stories and meet those families. But it's also really reinforcing to hear Dr. Ackerman tell us that he's now done all these studies that say kids can play sports and kids can swim and kids can do what they want. And if you take the proper medicine and you pay attention to your proper therapy, you could still thrive. And I think you walk away with a very positive feeling, like I can live with this. There's some things that stink, but I'd much rather have a box in my chest than be in a wheelchair and be completely unable to do anything. So you definitely walk away feeling like, oh, I can still live.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that is what eventually people feel eventually. I think it's that initial, am I going to hear something that's really scary? But I think that there are facts and there are objective talks that help all of us understand our conditions a little bit better. But mostly what we're feeling is a sense of community, and a sense of community that's actually really thriving. So I actually just got back from Dominican Republic. I've traveled, I think, I don't know, probably over 75,000 miles a year with this ICD. I only had trouble one time going through the airport, and that was the very first SADS conference I ever went to was in Columbus, Ohio. And it was my very first time traveling with my device, like probably a month after I'd gotten it. And I walked through the metal detector, which you can do. You just have to walk through fast. You just walk through the metal detector. But then I beeped, and it was totally unrelated to the device, but I beeped. So then, of course, they come and wand me with this big giant magnet. So it's the wand that's a magnet that they actually do to hand pat you down, which is actually totally not what you need. And that wanded over my device, and it turned it to magnet mode, which essentially, shuts off the tachytherapy or the shocking for the duration of literally about 45 seconds. But it is very funny that it was my first SADS conference that, the only time in all the countries and states and airports I've ever been that I had an issue with the device. But, I think that it's a shame that we're not doing it in person yet, but getting just the content, the breakout groups, the ability to ask questions of people, why are you on this treatment plan and I'm not? And how come, if this sport helps you and this other sport doesn't help you? Or even some little nuanced things like, how did they come up with a school plan for their kids, right? Or did their kids go to camp? What was the recovery for X, Y, and Z procedure? And while everyone's situation is unique, I think that because these diseases are so rare, these syndromes are so rare, it's hard to find even a small group of people that can say that they've experienced the same thing, right? So what kinds of things, Amy, are you looking forward to for this upcoming conference?
The upcoming one, I'm looking forward to the updates on gene therapy, which they keep saying that it's some new treatment, and I'm like, where is it going? It's not going anywhere. Because every year I ask about it, and they're like, oh, yeah, 5 to 10 years. And then next year, they're like, oh, another 5 to 10 years. And I'm like, but you just said that last year. So I don't know. I really hope they do have it, and they hope to have it in the time I'm still here.
Erin, do you have the scheduled, and are the, I don't know the answer to this question, are families allowed to come to the scientific sessions, or is that separate?
is there a medical conference first?
Hi. No, that's a great question, Jen. We do have a scientific one later on, and but that is meant for medical professionals for now. But the following one we do have a great Q&A session with Dr. Hardy and Dr. Ackerman that you guys can ask your questions to.
And will there be any discussion about the latest genetic treatments for CPVT or any of the channelopathies for Amy? I didn't look at the
We
schedule.
are looking at those right now. We did have one on the books. We are looking for, and like you said, Amy, is always changing, right? So we did have a speaker for that. It's still in the works. That's the best thing about
Yes.
conferences, that things can change it on a dime, right? So we are looking for a speaker for that exact session right now. But I think it's still on our agenda. Yes.
Great. And then the families can participate in any of the breakout sessions that they want to.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so typically the family sessions put on by, Mike Ackerman and all the other scientific advisors are chock full of medical information, because this conference, unlike most others, I think that SADS understands that the patient community, which is all of us, are very sophisticated, right? Because we have rare diseases and we have a device. And I think most of us have owned that fact, or we wouldn't be at the conference and understand a whole lot more about our disease and condition. So I've found the family sessions to be very engaging and up to date scientifically, because that's what the community is asking for.
I would say, having gone to the meeting, maybe 10 years, maybe more, it's really nice to see how the therapy has evolved to the point that now I look forward to just hearing how much better things are for our families, because I remember the very first year I went, they were still like, if you had a box or you had long QT, you should be playing badminton and chess.
Or archery, bowling.
Yeah, or bowling. And now Mike Ackerman gets up there and says, oh, if you want to play football or ice hockey or swim, you should consult your doctor, make sure you stay on your beta blockers, and we can talk. And so just seeing it over the course of many years, it's been amazing how much the science has changed. And it's no longer this super scary thing. I mean, and all these families that now get tested and know their situation, it's actually beneficial to them because they're not walking around at high risk anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the breakout sessions are perfect for meeting people exactly with your condition.
Mm-hmm.
So for Amy, she could go to CPVT. If you have long QT3, there's a long QT3 breakout. And that's where you meet people in exactly the same boat as you. And then you compare notes.
No, it makes sense. What about you, Amy? So 2014 was your first conference then, or?
2015 was my first.
So what have you seen in terms of changes, to either the conference itself or the information that we have for you and your condition?
In 2015, they didn't have any breakout sessions, and then they started the following year, but I didn't go to that one. And then I went to the one in Canada and the one in Ann Arbor and Atlanta.
And have you made friends with some of the SADS community over the years?
Yes. And I do know somebody else who's also in New York, and he also has a similar story to me.
That's awesome. How do you keep in touch with them outside of the conference?
Facebook or WhatsApp or phone number or email.
No, that's great. My last two, I think it was Michigan, I brought my son who has long QT and then my daughter along, and she made friends with one of our SADS children who's super inspirational and has an ICD. And Harper, my child, was very adamant about learning CPR and how to use the AED. And she was maybe 7 at the time because of her new friend. And, I think that the children are really heartwarming during this conference. I think that as parents, we are maybe a little nervous because we don't want them to think that, they have a condition that's going to kill them at any point in time, because honestly, the people that show up for the SADS conference are the ones that are well doctored, well cared for, and have had their risk mitigated significantly, right? And so I would say if you're a parent and you're a little worried or wondering if you should bring your child because maybe this is going to be something scary for them, it is absolutely not. It is just really fun. It is fun. They learn things. They learn CPR and the AED. I don't know how we're going to do that easily, online, but the community for the kids is just phenomenal, and they are not scared. They feel less alone. I think that tone, like Andy was saying, is very happy and upbeat, and not at all scary.
Yeah. So my sister was with me every time I went to the conference. But she's not affected either. She's not affected, no.
Yeah. But she came for moral support?
Yeah.
Things or...
And she also came to learn about like the SADS condition and what's really updated right now. Because when I was first diagnosed, they were like, oh, you can't do this and can't do that. And
Exactly.
I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
I wasn't really a sporty person then, so it didn't really bother me.
It didn't matter as much, yeah.
Yeah. And then when I went to go for my master's degree, people were like, are you sure you can do all this with your working full time and all that? I'm like, yes. I'm just as normal as anybody. It's just that I have to take medication and I have an ICD. That's all.
That's right. That's exactly right.
But people don't see it that way. They're like, oh, heart condition? No.
Well, yeah. And I mean, what I've told people before is, right, try and kill me with an ICD. It's not very easy. I mean, I have protection against, tachycardia and bradycardia. I mean, I'd have to, bleed out or exsanguinate in order to die. It's actually quite hard to kill someone with an ICD. So those of us with it who have been living with it are should walk around with we're probably safer than most people that don't have one. So I think it's good to see, lots of looking healthy, feeling healthy, doing very active, exciting things, that kind of community that comes together.
Yeah, having an ICD was actually not that bad, even though it caused me to have very painful incision pain.
It did.
Yeah.
And did that last for a little while after your surgery, or?
A long while.
A long while, okay.
And then in 2016, I got it removed because, well, I didn't get it removed. I got it repositioned.
And did that help?
Yeah, it helped. And then I also had lead extraction.
You did? And how was that?
It helped, yeah. But I still have some incision pain from here and there.
I think a lot of us have had, one or more complications from the ICD. I think none of us would say that, the ICD comes without its problems or risks. I think that it definitely does, but most of us have, thankfully come through all of those just fine. But it's good to know that, you're not alone with those complications. I had 2 extractions as well, and probably every complication known to mankind with my ICD, but I'm still playing tennis, traveling, skiing, working. So I'm actually, you can see I'm at the hospital right now. So life goes on.
Yeah, that's what we call our mind, though.
Oh,
right
no.
Now.
Oh, no.
They're saying that the battery doesn't last as long.
Oh.
But when I went to the doctor, they're like, no, your battery is fine.
Well, that's good. That's good. Anything else you want to tell our viewers about the conference, or anything about your own personal journey that we haven't covered? And if anyone has any, from the community, any thoughts or questions or comments, please let us know.
I do think one of the benefits is you'll meet families that have very similar stories to you. You will make lifelong friends. I've made lifelong friends. And I communicate by email, by text, by Facebook. I even went all the way up to upstate New York because to go to an Oktoberfest event for their daughter, to honor their daughter. So you'll make lifelong friends, and it's nice to see them year after year. And so, as soon as this COVID thing is finally really gone, it'll be great, because the meeting was a lot of fun to just hang out and get to know these families, their kids, their stories. And then it just becomes this one big community. So really positive experience.
It really is. Absolutely. Amy, anything else?
No, I always have a positive experience getting to know everybody and providing my support to others as well.
I mean, I've made some of my best lifelong friends. Jasmine is one of my best friends that I've ever met in my whole life. And we rarely see each other in person, but we met at a SADS conference. So I think that, finding your person is easy in a place that has people with a lot of shared experiences and shared trauma and shared crises. And I think it brings a friendship from sort of a casual friendship to something much deeper really quickly. So if you're feeling alone, or you're feeling like, you don't quite understand your day-to-day life or how to do X, Y, and Z, you're bound to find someone who has struggled with the thing you're struggling with, whether it's, insurance stuff or work-related issues, or, like I said, traveling or sending your kids to school, sending your kids to camp. All of the unanswered what ifs, the questions that you wonder about when you're, laying in bed trying to fall asleep at night, whether you're brand new diagnosed or you've been diagnosed for a long time. The SADS community, particularly the conference, is a great place to go get some of those, what if, what have I done? Where am I? what am I looking at next? Questions answered. Does anyone have any questions or chats? Otherwise, I don't know if we need to keep going. Erin, up to you guys if you want us to cover a different topic. But
I think you guys are doing great, and this has been really informative for everybody and for me, especially with being the back of watching everybody in conference. As a staff person, I just want to tell you guys, meeting everybody, I met a lot of you guys at conferences. The lifelong friendships that I've made with you guys have been great, and I miss everybody in person. I want to give a big hug, and that's hopefully next year in Houston we can do that. But right now, the virtual hugs will have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great community. It really is.
It really is.
We miss meeting in person. So
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, then at least we can see each other on the screen and chat, in the chat function or back and forth, and get at least the latest updates as to what the treatment plans are these days, and the latest research. And I think that you can't go wrong. You really can't.
And that's what we're here for. We want to give you guys the best information, and that community is so important to everybody. And I'm just so happy to be part of it, you guys. And to hear the stories, it's been great.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I mean, with that, we can just, I think we'll just all log off and have a great weekend for Halloween.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.